Welcome to The Disruption Is Now. Join us on this enlightening journey as we explore how AI is impacting our jobs, careers, lives, and the human experience. Each episode, host Greg Matusky will converse with visionaries and innovators at the forefront of AI, diving into its challenges, opportunities, and impact. So buckle up as we venture into the heart of disruption, and together, let's unfold the future.
Well, welcome to another episode of The Disruption Is Now, the podcast where we go into AI and its impact on human communications. I am Greg Matusky. I'm the host of the podcast, but I am also the CEO and founder of Gregory FCA. We're a national PR agency with offices in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and London. I'm excited today to welcome a guest. Brian Dunn has a company called Rogatio.ai. And this firm is really embedded in AI and how it's transforming the consulting practice. And that's a very, very big interest of mine because PR is a lot like consulting in many ways. And in fact, some of the studies that I often quote draw analogies between what's been done in the consulting world and what's been done in the PR world. He's got a wholly different approach and a lot of experience in things like change management and how to really make organizations think differently. Brian, thanks for being with us. Did I get that right, or anything you'd like to amplify?
Absolutely. No, I think that's it. You know, I'm a consultant by accident. I started off studying French literature and economics and somehow ended up in the business world. And I think it comes down to I'm a professional problem solver. And I've just been fascinated by problems my whole career. So this is really just great to share some of the insights.
And I'll give you a big compliment. You know, we met on LinkedIn, and then I went to your website, and I just thought it was one of the most elegantly executed websites, and it really did make me want to ask questions. And I guess that is good, right? That's where you want to be nestled, isn't that the case?
This is where we start. You know, our whole sort of byline is the power of questions. And where this comes from is, you know, we are a society that's addicted to answers. It's very much this ready, fire, aim mentality. And we don't like things that slow us down. The problem is that means that we aren't necessarily spending the time that we need to thinking about things before we get going. And there's a problem with problem solving that we don't talk a lot about. And that is the risk of being wrong. And that risk is relatively higher when you're dealing with two specific scenarios and you're going against the consensus. It's either you're doing something completely new, which is innovation, or you're trying to disrupt the way that you work today. And in those scenarios, the costs are high, the probability of being wrong is high, and questions are the key to unlocking that.
Well, I want to know about your story too. Tell us how you got to this point, how you opened your firm, and what prepared you for this moment in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, this is something that for me is a little bit of a 2.0. Rogatio had a predecessor firm that I did while I was still with my prior firm as a consultant, an internal initiative. And it goes back about a decade or so ago when design thinking was the thing. And we were looking as a firm at, you know, what this meant for us. There was a lot of newness around design thinking in professional services. We looked at it through a different lens, I think, than, hey, let's just go buy a firm and do this. It was like, what is it actually that's going on here? And it was that design thinking was bringing a different perspective to problem solving, full stop. It was a different lens. And that was what was creating, I think, the interest with our clients, frankly. So we set about to kind of try to do something that was at a more holistic level, bringing in different perspectives to problem solving. And that's a real issue for traditional consultants like I was. We have a blind spot. We all kind of went to the same schools, got the same MBAs. We have a lot of the same experiences. And for as much as we talk about diversity in our firms, our thought processes are actually pretty similar. Our methodologies are pretty similar. And so it becomes a blind spot that can affect the outcome with our clients. And so this was really like, hey, we're going to get better answers by talking to folks. Well, the problem when we did that was we struggled to bring in external people at scale. It was difficult. It was like, oh, let's just go find some academic. Let's find some professor. They'll want to work with us. And we found a few, but those few didn't translate to every client situation, right? And so that internal initiative died on the vine. We struggled to kind of build that bench and keep people busy. It didn't mean that it didn't work and it didn't make sense. It just, we couldn't scale it. So fast forward to generative AI, it was like most people, the November 30th, 22, when ChatGPT came out with its more market-facing solution. I was very familiar with AI and ML for years, but that was a particular thing. And I just knew right there, I saw it. I was like, oh my gosh, I can solve this growth pain we have. I can do something here that's going to let me not be constrained. And that's where this came from.
An interesting parallel to my experience, right? I'd had not certainly a long-term love affair with AI, but for 2 years before that magical date of November 2022, we had been developing our own internal platform for content creation using generative AI. And it was going along, it wasn't nearly as accelerated as when ChatGPT was introduced. But then the day I saw it, I suddenly realized, Brian, this could solve one of the biggest friction points of my firm in its history. And that was my ability to teach other people how to communicate well. I would hold seminars, I'd hold content creation, I'd hold seminars on how to write, and we all felt good walking out, but it wasn't really retained because it's such a difficult task, especially for junior members of the firm, and it's something I think requires a real conditioning of your brain and your neural networks. And when I saw it, it was a joyous day. I suddenly realized I could help people really focus instead of on data, which are numbers and are grammar and syntax and word choice. They could focus on the message and communicating more effectively with other human beings. And it sounds like you had a similar epiphany.
So years ago, I worked on this study. I shared this with you that was looking at the effect of technology on productivity, right? And we were asked by one of the big tech companies to go out and look at, think of it, you're using a tool on your desktop and you're maneuvering through email and, presentations and spreadsheets. And the hypothesis was that this would help us work better. And what we found actually was that manipulation of windows, using a mouse, clicking on buttons, doing these various things, it actually required parts of basically what was controlling spatial reasoning in your brain, which then links to problem solving and abstraction and a whole bunch of different things. This was being used, right, silently in the background. And it was being used to a level that we were able to measure as a proxy for cognition, which was IQ. It was a 15 to 20% drop in IQ, the use of these tools. How long did that effect stay? It was a 6 to 8 hour half-life. It was a 20-hour full life to go away. And what that meant was these tools that were meant to help us be more productive were impacting our ability to think. And this to me is this is where I started on this whole, technology meeting us on our terms as opposed to on its, and how that friction is there. I think this is really the bigger thing.
Just stop for one second.
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
Go back to that. I just want to hit on that again. So the use of the mouse, the keyboard, flipping between tabs, engaged the spatial relationship of your brain in such a way that there was a 15 to 20% drop in IQ that lingered for how long?
6 to 8 hours was the half-life, 20 hours to fully recover. Think about that for a second.
I had never heard that before. Now, how does that impact the use of AI?
What do? Crudely, we have a whole host of these AI-generated expert persona. They're basically fictitious experts who show up like a human and interact with you real time with an avatar, with a voice, with a personality, with a backstory, all these things. And they show up on Teams. It's a very, very different interaction than sitting in front of the bar on ChatGPT, which I love, but it's very different. Now, in part of that, we decided to be anthropomorphic from go. Why? Well, one of the reasons is this reason. It's this having technology meet us on our terms. When we can switch and be in voice mode, as opposed to being and this maneuvering around things, we're not stumbling with this 50 to 20% handicap, right? On our cognition, we're able to be in the moment and able to have a richer interaction. And you could argue you can get that just with voice alone. You can get a lot of that, but we've gone into this, very deeply, this idea of really being human-like, and probably not for all of the same reasons that everybody does this. I mentioned that there's friction point. Another reason why we're into the anthropomorphic is it gives us a better answer. And what I mean by that is, these LLMs are lazy. They go for easy answers. And what you want to be able to do is get into the semantics of these LLMs to really pull out in their latent space something a lot more original. That's another reason why we do.
This is incredibly interesting to me because I've recently gone solely to conversational when relating to my LLMs as opposed to the keyboard. And I'm a professional writer by trade, right? And I've written for major magazines before. I was in the public relations industry, business magazines. Like, I know how to write. And I was finding with keyboard entry that it would come back in a more mechanical sense. So I flipped the conversational both on my desktop and on my phone. And I do much more conversing with it. And it seems to be, it gives me results which are more conversational. And as we say in writing, meets the reader where they live, right? Speaks to them at the level of their understanding. So it doesn't speak over them and it doesn't speak under them. And it's been, again, another epiphany in my life. And then I've been able to create longer documents in a very conversational, professional style, in the classic style, as Steven Pinker calls it, of writing. And it's interesting. It's not anthropomorphic, but it is conversational. And I treat it like I say please and thank you, not so much for the machine, I think for me, to remember that if I treat it more like a human assistant, I do get better results. You've taken it a step further and explain that experience. Explain that experience in the client setting. When you say you have these different personas, what am I seeing? What is the experience like?
So we liken this to theater, right? We are in the business of selling an experience. We're not a product company. We're not a technology company. And what we're about is the conversation as an experience. We're really trying to make this immersive. We're trying to bring people into it. When you interact with our personas, it's, a lot like what we're doing here, what we learned to do during COVID very quickly, people on a screen interacting. And you don't necessarily know that, Dr. Selena Caswell, who's one of our personas, is an AI. It's a many-to-many interaction. That's the other thing. This is not just one interaction one-on-one. This is many. So you might have 10 to 15 people, in an interaction. There might be folks in the room who are human, to be sure, but up on the screen, you're going to have a whole bunch of other people, and or experts, AI persona, who are there interacting. And what we have found is very quickly you suspend disbelief. Very quickly you're drawn in, right? And the whole point of this is to engage in not like a 3 or 4 minute, customer service discussion or a one shot, like, let me ask the expert and get the answer. That's not what we do. We've gone to great lengths to create an experience where this is hours of interaction. This is not minutes, right? Very, very different context. So if you're in a management meeting and you're making some decision and you brought in some experts to probe and triangulate, very Ray Dalio-ish, right? That might be a 2, 3, 4 hour meeting. Guess what? Those AI persona are right there in that session, like everybody else, leaning in, situational awareness. We've had to build short and long-term memory capacity that's our own proprietary stuff to deal with that. But the whole point is to enter into a discussion, a dialogue, and it's to help at the end of the day, the human. Bear that in mind. I think we're from the same school on this. It's not about looking to the box to give me the answer. To the contrary, we're all about using this tool to actually pressure test our own thinking, ask ourselves better questions, come up with better answers ourselves. And so that whole theater of an experience is really about bringing us as the humans to a better decision, a better thought process, a better outcome, and not just be looking to the tool to tell us deterministically it's A, B, or C.
So what is the end product of this process, right? How is it delivered? And what do you find? Look, I've done many of the exercises of Ethan Mollick. We were speaking about him before the call. the professor at Wharton. And sometimes I think it's a little so dumbed down that I don't think it would pass the test of real consulting, right? When you do it like I've done it, right? I'm not a consultant, but in my tests and things. And it does lack the depth of real thorough analysis. So tell me about that in your paradigm, what you get out of it.
Yeah, so there's two parts to how I would answer that. Number one, we are not professing to be able to do everything that a consultant can do. We are addressing most notably what is particularly right now a very specific pain point that consultancies face, which is we tend to think alike. We tend to not actually be all that creative in terms of problem solving. We're addicted like everyone else to answers. And we don't have these perspectives. It's harder than you think to get them assembled. I've done this for a long time. And so a lot of what we do is working with other consultancies, selling ourselves in as a white label, if you will, bringing our capabilities to them. And every consulting project has a start, a middle, and an end. It's very easy for us to come up with the start and to promise what the end is. Where it gets messy is the middle. That's where the magic happens. And that's an area where we intervene a lot by bringing in this expertise. I think concretely, though, you raise a good point, analysis, things like that, these tools are moving really fast. There's a lot that we weren't able to do even just a few months ago, right? I'm convinced that increasingly, look where we're going to be in a year's time. Ethan says this is the worst AI we've ever seen. These tools are going to be able to do a lot more than we give them credit for. Right now, we're focused on a piece of the consulting process, but I think we'll be able to get to the entire process very quickly.
And how is this going to impact consultancies overall? I mean, this is the top of the pyramid with regard to white collar labor, right? And and it was never thought, and I think Sam Altman even said this, that he thought ChatGPT would ever affect the highest level of consultancy, and in fact, it has. So we're bashful. We don't talk about these things. People talk about the ROI, and it's not there. I can tell you, when you're a management consultant, whether you are doing business development work, building IC, doing something internal, you got to bill your hours. So your hours are going into the P&L, whether you like it or not, and they're going in at your rack rate. So an hour spent with a client, as revenue, or an hour spent as cost in the firm, it's the same number, right? And these are large numbers, right? They're, a partner, $10,000 and up, an average, management consultant at a mid-level, $6,000, $7,000 a day, right? These are high billing rates. It's not accessible to a lot of companies. It's not accessible for every type of problem when maybe that expertise could have really made the difference. And I think that's the interesting bit here, is that there's an opportunity here to democratize that in a way that hasn't been seen before. There's a lot of people that make a good living doing single shingle, and being out there doing what they do and not charging those billing rates, to be sure, right? But giving the same value. They're just, at a certain scale. Two things. One, I think those single shingle consultants could be taught to punch above their weight. And I always talk about, hey, rather than go drive an Uber, why don't you come to Rogatio and drive a conversation? Like, we could give you a couple of these AI folks to put in a team with you, and suddenly you're not just an expert in supply chain at a lake house retired in Michigan. You're doing something else here. You've got some other capability around you. That's an interesting play. The other part of it, though, is from a client perspective, think of all the SMB out there who could benefit from having access to this sort of thinking, high value management consulting that they can't get today. That's the thing. That's, I think, really important. My experience, Brian, I'll share it with you, is I think we've done a very good job of AI enabling our firm. And I think it's given me access to higher level thinking in the way I structure things. If I'm looking for a problem, looking at a problem, even down to very tactical things. For instance, I'll have a difficult call coming up with a client, and I will relate the experience to the AI. And it does really, I mean, I had a conflict of interest recently. We had started with one company and had been with them for a couple months. They were very happy. And then their major competitor asks us to represent them at a much higher retainer. And I put it all into the LLM, and it made one good point, right? A lot of it was obvious, the Chinese wall and assure them it's your ethics standards. But it said, sell them on the fact that they're getting better value. And I said, let me, what do you mean by that? Right. And I went deeper and it said, they're at a lower retainer than what the large competitor, but they're going to get the same level of thought and work as their larger competitor. So actually, it's to their advantage and their competitor's disadvantage to be paying more for the same product, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And that made a lot of sense when I presented it, and the company accepted it, and we now have 2 great clients that are very happy with our work. And that was a problem I was facing, and I could have never found that anywhere. I don't think I would have ever struck upon that. So that's one thing that's amazing. The other thing is that you had said that it allows people to interface with the LLM in a way they're comfortable with, in a way that's appropriate to them. I have some people in my firm who like very templated approaches. We set up custom GPTs that ask them questions. What are you writing? Where will it appear? Who is the audience? What is the message? What is the secondary message? What is the tertiary message? And they like that. Then I have other people like myself. I don't want any of that. All I just want to do is riff. I just want to have a conversation with you. I want to tell you everything I can. I don't want to worry about leads or transitions or repetitiveness or verb usage. And that works for me. For other people, that's just insurmountable. It's just, it's chaos for them. So I work in that way that unleashes me. And then I see how I can structure that to help other people gain, perhaps from my wisdom, because I have to structure it, right? But it works for the way they think and they approach the conversation. I have some people who will go to the LLM and they'll do a first draft, take it off and take it out and finishing it. I prefer to do what I call the pizza making approach, where I start and then I keep it in the oven and I open the door and I see that the one side's cooking quicker and I turn it a little bit and flip it. And then, 2 minutes later, I check it again and I lift it up and get the crust a little crustier. And so I keep it into, it's just about 85, 90% of the way there, right? So there is that element that because it's a general purpose platform, it allows you to work in a style that you find most comfortable, which just blows my mind, right?
Yeah, it's this whole organizing work around what people are like, part of it that you mentioned, right? And then what does that do? It frees you up to focus on what you are uniquely excellent at. That's the thing, right? So different people are going to use it differently. They're going to get different value in different ways from it. And as you say, and all of that from a general purpose thing, boy, that's pretty cool. Are there not a whole bunch of complications in that wave of hand statement? Yeah, there are. But we've never seen something that can be as quickly deployed and adopted in such a way that it helps people be better. And I've said this, I'll go on record here on a podcast saying it, the fourth industrial revolution was what? It was about the rapid advance of technology in the 21st century, that was the spin on what that was. I think we are at the cusp of the fifth industrial revolution, frankly. I think what that's going to be marked by is a rapid period of advancement in human cognition. And it's going to be assisted by technology, but the focus is going to be on our cognition advancing, and that is going to be the part of the fifth industrial revolution. I'm convinced of it.
And so when you say cognitive, I might be saying it in a different way. You can correct me. I always say that we're moving out of the information age, which was data and bits and syntax and verbs, into the information age, into the intelligence, the age of intelligence.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And in PR, the age of intelligence is how do you create a message which resonates and advances human communications. But to get there, right, there was so much information blocking that process that what you would have is very high level people who could manage both of those neural networks, the information and the intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And then a lot of people never got to the age of intelligence because they were so bogged down with this information that they never became masters of that. So they didn't know what fly to choose to catch the trout, so they never caught the trout, right?
Never caught the trout.
And then
let alone learn to cook it, whatnot. Yeah.
Right. So I agree with you 1,000%. This, and I want to go back to something you said about shingle practitioners. You know, someone asked me what this is going to do to PR, and I said, I think some of the big firms are going to be devastated by it. And I'm a boutique firm, and because they're slow to change, and they want to assume this role of expert, and they don't want anything to challenge that. So they don't really want to participate in this, right? They want to say, this is art, what we do, and it's hard to recreate. And then there's flexible firms like mine, which are small enough to have seen it, adapted to it, and fully taking advantage of it, which impacts pricing, it impacts trajectory, how much you can do. And then there's going to be what I always call the super creators. That might be your single shingle person who can use these tools, he or she can use these tools with such fluidity that they can produce high quality work at an unbelievable pace because they build the first kind of solutions and answers, from all their questions first, and then they can repurpose that. So if it's a change management program, they can take the messages and now create a string of emails, now create video scripts, now create presentation content, now create posters, now create digital ads all around what you want to invoke, the feelings you want to invoke inside the enterprise to get real change. So, and my final thought is change management, right? Which we have all the tools, we have all the knowledge base. Where we've been consumed in the last year is really on change management. We've held 104 training sessions on AI in the last year. We get about 80% participation. Some say that's overkill, but people show up. They like it. They share their own findings, their own GPTs, right? They've come to realize it's a safe place, that they're not going to be penalized, that they aren't going to be looked at worse as a professional because they're using a tool to do better work, which some organizations have done. Any suggestions on how to carry this through?
Yeah, that's a great call out. And I think we share that perspective. I certainly share it when I try to think about what we're doing. We're building for a post-AGI world. We have no idea what that looks like. So we're trying to kind of imagine it and stand there in the future and work backwards. And we're placing some bets on this idea of these machines aren't just going to be a work tool, they're going to be a work colleague. And I better start thinking about it that way, because what that means is that they're in an org chart somewhere, potentially. This isn't just a tool that I'm using. Like, I might at some point be, working into a box that's managed by an AI who's got a gazillion agents inside that box with them. But for all intents and purposes, it's a box that that's my boss, right? That sounds. I'm going to
borrow that thought. Brian.
That's the future. I mean, you can read the tea leaves. We're anthropomorphizing. We've got avatars. We've got voice. We give them names. We've been doing this in science fiction for how many years? So we know that model, and humans are it lets us engage with it better. There are risks, there are problems, there are issues to deal with, but that's a big deal. What would I do with people to try to get them going? I think this is probably where most organizations that I work with fall down. You need Sherpas. You need people out there to lead that horse to water and show them. So it doesn't mean that apprenticeship goes out the window. The things that you described that you're doing, showing your employees how you use it, explaining to them that this may not be how you want to use it, but here are the sorts of things you can do. Let's mess around with it. That is the key to getting this kind of going. It's very, very like, oh shit, I could have thought of that. But yes, that is the thing to do. Because only once you've experienced this firsthand will your own personal light go on where you say, here's how this could help me to be better. Here's how this will help me address my own specific things that are holding me back. And that's what this is about. It's about you. It's about what is it that's going to let you stay in your flow and do what you do better.
Oh, well, Brian, I got to thank you for your time. It was very fortunate that we met on LinkedIn and that you had the time and the graciousness to be here today.
Absolutely.
But I think you're really onto something. I mean, this is exciting to me because I don't think I've put enough of the questioning in things in my life. I was always an entrepreneur, and I thought I was charged with coming up with answers, and I never realized the value of questioning. And now with AI, of course, not only can you create better quality questions, but you can engage in ways that deliver better thought. And I congratulate you on what you've accomplished so far and where you're going with this.
Thank you. Look, this notion of the power of questions is what this is all about. We don't, as a society, spend enough time thinking, challenging, discussing things, having meaningful discussions, meaningful dialogue about issues that matter. And I think that is really what this is about. If there's a purpose behind what Rogatio is, it's we're trying to raise the bar on that problem right there of, we don't think as well as we used to. Isn't that a shame? Well, maybe we could do something about that. And I think AI is the use case that is really the use case that is going to justify all this investment. It's going to make us more advanced, our cognition more advanced, and it's going to be that fifth industrial revolution I referred to.
Well, thanks for being with us. And if anyone wants to find you, they can find you at Rogatio.ai, right? Or Rogatio.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. Rogatio.ai or on LinkedIn. We're happy to talk to you. We're happy to give you a chance to see what we do. It's exciting. It's fast moving. And I look forward to also hearing what your questions are.
Well, thanks so much. And we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Be well.
Bye-bye.
This podcast is a production of Gregory FCA. If you enjoyed our discussion today and want to continue exploring the transformative power of AI, please check out more episodes and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.